please. So that's great. We'll basically start off having a chat with me. I'm just going to join with us now. Neil.
Simon, welcome. Hi, how are you?
Hey, how you doing? Good to see you.
Good to see you, buddy, as well.
You've joined us at last. That's not too bad, though. I think I managed to completely crash the whole system when we did something like this. It's spring last year. So, but fortunately, the StreamYard guys sorted that all out. So brilliant. Thanks very much. I'm going to just sort of I'm going to do a welcome for yourself, obviously, but I'd also like to just welcome everyone who's joining us this evening. We're streaming at the moment on YouTube and also on Facebook Live as well. And we are recording this. So, we'll be a little bit careful about what we say, but yeah, feel free to watch it back. We'd love to hear from you as well this evening. So if you've got any comments about injury and your experience of injury, and if you've got any questions that you'd like to put in the chat, we'll put them up if they're interesting. We'll share them with everyone, and also we'd love to hear from where you are watching us from this evening. So anyway, Neil, welcome. Happy New Year. How are you?
Happy New Year to you, Simon. I'm very well. We're ticking along here. Obviously, we've got various challenges going on, but the things are looking good for the coming running season, for winter. Everything's picking up. People are smiling. We've got lots of sun here. Everyone's getting out on the pistes, and yeah, no, we're definitely feeling optimistic about the way things are going just now.
Oh, brilliant! I'm only a little bit jealous.
Yeah, you'll be over here soon enough.
I hope so. I'm just going to introduce you, Neil, because obviously I know you very well, but some others might not. Neil has worked for more than 20 years in the world of elite sport and is a clinical specialist in musculoskeletal sports injuries at his clinic, Clinique du Sport, based in Chamonix. So if anyone's heading over to Chamonix this summer, maybe on a Run the Wild trip, hopefully you don't get to see Neil, but if you do get to see Neil, then you know who he is now.
Pop in for a coffee and say hi anyway.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. Come along anyway, right? His experience is unparalleled. Team GB at the Olympics and Commonwealth Games, and quite a few of those as well. The America's Cup, Volvo Ocean Race, co-founder of BeFit Apps, and you also work with some of the best trail runners in the world. Not myself included, obviously, in that section at all, but from your base in the Alps. And yourself, you are also an excellent trail runner, having completed...
Well, I'm a punter. I try to get right. I get round most of the time. Let's say
you'll be very, very modest. Neil is a very, very good trail runner. So basically, we've got someone watching from France. We've got Stephanie watching from Brittany in France. And I'm going to pass on your question to Neil shortly. But anyone else who's watching from wherever you are, please let us know where you're watching from, and do pop up your questions as well. We'll try and get through them. So I suppose start. Where did your passion for sport come from, Neil?
Well, it's something that started. I didn't really have much choice in this. I was a real youngster when I started, and it all started off with gymnastics when I was 4 years old, and from there, that was essentially my full-time sports outside of school, rugby, football, that sort of thing, up to the age of 12. And for me, I think that sort of paved the way. It gave me a real grounding in sport. It was 5-6 days a week, 2.5, 3, 4 hour sessions. And it just became something that I really cannot live without now. It's quite simple. I understand there are a lot of other people out there who just need sport. Keeps people balanced, keeps people healthy, and if I can do anything to help facilitate that, people enjoy it, perform how they want to perform and how they're able to perform, then I'm having a good time as well.
That kind of leads me quite nicely onto that other, my next question really, which was, why physio? And I suppose, some of what you're saying there alludes to that, is your desire to help people and facilitate that. Is that correct then?
Absolutely. For me, I went through school, started off at university. I actually started off with a sports science degree. I always knew I wanted to be involved in sport. It's definitely a part of my life, and I can't do without it. And actually, I was trying to toss up between osteopathy, physiotherapy, and chiropractic. So I went through all the different options, looked at them closely, and I'm glad I chose physio. From my point of view, it's kind of it's the one that has a real science backing to it. And I think as a physio, it's afforded me some pretty good opportunities that I wouldn't have had should I have chosen either of those other professions. Both of which are great. We need chiropractors, we need osteos for sure. But just for me, the application of the practical side of sport, the physio is definitely the correct route for me.
And I suppose, I mean, it must have been like, you've had a great journey. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, looking at your bio and just seeing the amount of experience you've had.
It's exhausting. I can't bear to read it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it must have been an incredible journey. And obviously, you know, you've worked with so many different elites, and also as well, I suppose, you know, different world-class clinicians like yourself, really.
Yeah, first of all, I say I'm very lucky. There's plenty of people out there who just do all the right things. They work as hard as they can. They perform really well, and my heart sort of goes out to all those folk who don't have the opportunity. But I would say there has been quite a lot of graft in the background, certainly early years, and I think for me it was that combination of starting off with my own sporting interests, my own sporting background, and actually being very clear from the start what I wanted to do. I wanted to do sports physio. I didn't get to the Olympics myself as a sports person, and I would have loved to have done that. And that was very much a goal of mine entering physio. It was to experience elite sport, to experience elite physiotherapy, and you know, you really do share the journey with these guys. So even if you haven't been there yourself as an athlete, it's you get so much satisfaction just from being part of that big parade that goes on. And seeing people's careers, they go, if they've got 8 years, they can do 3 Olympics. You see them from when I was working with the judo, you had the juniors, the cadets, and they'd work their way through, and even saw some of those go on and win medals at Olympics. So it makes you feel old very quickly when you talk, but
yeah, that must be
they do become transferable skills. So the 2 sports I've probably done in terms of Olympic and sort of high level elite work has been judo and sailing, and effectively I really know nothing about judo or sailing when I got into it. I'll be very honest. You upskill pretty quickly, but in fact, if you've got a mentality towards high performance and you've got an eye on the goal, that's really all that matters.
I can see those sort of sports dovetailing really well, like, you know, a sailor, a boat just full of people doing judo or something like that.
They're both surprisingly physical. The sailors, a lot of people probably don't realize just what an incredibly physical job that is. It's tough, and they say same as the judo guys. They carry injuries all the time, and they learn how to cope and just carry on. Absolutely. So yeah, no, but with the sailing, it's great. I had a slightly extended role with those guys, being able to help them actually be responsible for all of the training throughout the America's Cup campaign. So for me, that was a great experience. I learned so much from it, and yeah, I'm using all of that, a lot of those skills now.
Okay, I mean, I suppose that's the thing as well. You're not just part of those athletes, you know, physical journey. You're part of their mental journey, because you know. And it's something we'll chat about a little bit later on in the call, but you know, you are with them through the highs and the lows. You know, must be at every point, and probably quite a lot during the lows as well, I suppose, when they're spending a lot more time with you.
Exactly. Injury, time on the physio bench. It's yeah, sometimes you're a shoulder to cry on. Sometimes you need to give them a good kick up the backside to get going. You adopt lots of different roles. And again, that's.
How do you deal with that? How do you find that? Because obviously people must be kind of a bit of emotional roller coaster. How do you know, kind of decompress? How do you come out of that then?
Yeah, it's a good question. To be honest,
by the way.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I think with a lot of these teams, you have support. You have a support team within the structure. So you have the athletes, and then you have the support services go alongside them. And yeah, we develop our own offloading, our own debriefing techniques. But actually, yeah, you do need to be quite mentally robust a lot of the time when you're dealing with these guys, and you're involved in conversations where people may get to do the one event that's been their dream since they were a kid, and you're in that conversation when it comes to them realizing that they actually cannot achieve that dream. And but just consistency, always, as I say, for me, without being callous, if you've got science on your side and you've got good logic, good reasoning, you generally end up at the right decision for everyone. and people will understand that, provided it's been presented the right way.
Absolutely. So how did you, because obviously, looking after all these sports and your journey starting from gymnastics and then at what point did you discover trail running? How did you get involved in trail running?
Well, that's that's all thanks to Chamonix. It's I think I'm not the only person to have been down this road. But if I can just share a little bit of the story really behind it all, without going into too much detail. After gymnastics, I went into rugby, and I actually after that went into lifting. So I actually became quite big, and I got up to just under 100 kilos. It wasn't all muscle, but I was a significantly different shape to how I am now. And we ended up coming to Chamonix. We were lucky enough to do a season, and we actually came back in the summer. And having absolutely no clue what was going on, came around. There were huge crowds in the centre of Chamonix, and fell upon literally on the finish line of the UTMB back in 2000 and 2005. And saw these guys coming in. They looked all pretty tired, and it really wasn't until a bit later actually was able to step back and find out what they'd actually been running, what was involved. And at the time, and this was say 2005, I'd never run further than 5 kilometers.
Wow!
And even that was under sufferance. I mean, I do the interval running and sprint work for rugby, and I enjoyed sprinting at club level and things like that. But actually, the idea of going more than 5 kilometers, never mind 170 for however many days, left me with a guttural shock. Literally, I cannot explain. I almost felt nauseous, and I had this reaction to myself that I'm still impressed with. I said to myself, "There's absolutely no way on the planet you'll ever catch me even thinking about doing something like that." So of course you go away and you go, well, that was quite an interesting reaction. Why did I have that reaction? Went away and thought about it, and found it was actually quite an interesting thing. I don't mind challenging myself, and little by little, it took about 6 months to actually think about it, and then basically, right, so that's it. I got a bike. Started road biking, went from just under 100 kilos down to about 80, trying to digest a lot of muscle on the way, which worked. And then it was 2000 and 2009. I can say I ran my first trail race here, and even then I wasn't convinced it was for me. That was all of 26 kilometers. The Petit Trait de Fez, just the local one here, but I got dragged back, made some good friends. They kept me out, and actually, I slowly adapted. I changed, and I found the utter joy in being able to just move for hours on end in the mountains, and that's what it became. It was about spending time in Chamonix and actually being able to see so much of it in a short period of time, and it became rather addictive. Yeah, I never want to let go.
Running in the Alps. If anyone's not experienced this yet, then definitely sign up to a Run the World trip. You will experience it, but it is addictive. It is completely, at all levels, from 10K up. But yeah, I mean, I think when I was talking to Hayden Hawkes a couple of weeks ago, I'd Strava stalked him, and it's always good to look at people and see what their Strava. But some of your sessions are pretty fierce, Neil. So very, very impressive. So we've got a few people putting up their comments, and we're probably gonna do a little bit of a chat about some in sort of general stuff, because we're not going to do specific advice, because I think that's a little bit unfair on Neil. But we're going to try and do some generalized and some common themes. So everyone please post up on the chat if you do have any questions for Neil, and we'll try and bring them together. Obviously, Run the World is focused on trail running, and in your experience, what would you say are the most common injuries that you come across? We're looking really, I suppose, the whole purpose of this chat, and why we're recording it, is to give people some advice on how to avoid injury whilst they're training. We can't deal with the event itself, because who knows what could happen, but during training. So I suppose, what would be the kind of the most common injuries that you see in trail runners?
We can sort of categorize things quite a few different ways, but I think the easiest way to look at it is essentially load-related injuries. So people doing too much, too soon, too intensely, and too often.
Okay.
And the resultant effect on that, basically, not to break it down too much to the science, but if you're training, you're looking for adaptation in the body. You're trying to get fitter, stronger, all these other facets of training. But ultimately, the training is the insult to the body. And unless you're recovering, you're not going to be making positive adaptation. So if you're doing too much, your body, your muscles can't recover, your cardiovascular system gets overloaded, and you simply just accumulate load instead of positive adaptation. And this then manifests in pain. You end up with all sorts of different problems. You have all the tendinopathies, bursitis, you have chronic muscle strains, you have all these sort of things. You have bone stress reactions. There's lots of these things, but essentially we can be quite easy in breaking them down to saying, okay, all those things fit into load related issues. And the other category obviously is trauma. So you're running down hills and you turn an ankle, you trip, you fall. I would say I still see, believe it or not, even on the trails around here, still see plenty more load related issues than we do trauma.
That's interesting.
So yeah,
I would say actually kind of that's a really interesting point. I don't know about you, but when you go skiing, if I'm going to take a tumble, it's on like some green slope. It's some innocuous thing where I'm just chatting to someone, doing something. It's really embarrassing. And it's kind of the same thing, I think, with the trauma. If I'm going to twist my ankle, I'm just doing some kind of really flat section somewhere in the Chilterns. Whereas if I'm in the Alps, I know there's real problems here if I go over. So it's almost like I'm a bit more switched on. I've touched wood.
Oh yeah, we've had even from trail running, we've had everything. We've had broken pelvises, and last year I even had someone who managed to fracture their spine.
Wow.
Just went off. It was really high up on the cervical spine. Just went off the side of a trail and ended up 40 meters further down the hill. So yeah, you do want to pay attention, and for that, it is completely absorbing. You don't have your mind wandering too far.
That's it. Don't run with the phone and be in the moment. That's definitely key. Trail running, yeah. So someone popped up a question actually, and I think this ties in. So the rule of increasing 10% across intensity, volume, and then there's what's your sort of thoughts on that? Is that sort of still kind of mainstream theory?
Yeah, it's what I would say. It's a very safe figure. But there's lots of different ways of increasing that 10%. And if you're going to do, if you're introducing speed work, yeah, it's very difficult to quantify what is 10% more speed work. If you're keeping everything else steady, the easy thing is simple. Most people just log their distance or the vertical gain. Those ones are relatively easy to quantify. I would go a little bit further into looking at a few more things. Obviously, things like training stress scores. If you run with power, you get good numbers there. There's lots of different ways of quantifying it, and probably that gives you the best reflection overall. However, what I would say with all these things, everyone has a different recovery rate. Young, old, training experience, what phase of the year are you in? You may have periods where you are increasing a lot more than 10%. And if you actually draw the graph out, starting from 5K, 10K, 15K, it's going to take you a very long time to start to see inroads. So I think if you say 10%, it's a very, very safe number. And in other instances, some people may need to have weeks where they don't increase anything at all.
Yeah.
In order to get the kind of response, you have to have download weeks as well. That's not to be underestimated. And I think if I can get across the idea that you're only getting better when you recover, the training itself doesn't make you better. It's only the recovery. So again, you have the other side of the coin. It's where you have some people who disregard the value of recovery and don't work hard on it. And then you have some guys who work really hard. They do everything. They have clean diets. There's very little alcohol. Sleep well. All the good sleep hygiene. All those good habits that go around quality recovery. So that 10% for that person is different from the 10% from the someone else who runs but still has takeaways, enjoys plenty of pints, largely sedentary outside. Lots of other factors. So I think it is the number that's given out, and it is quite a safe number. But yeah, I would say even if you are using that 10%, I would still program weeks where you have 0% or even minus 10%, just to allow the body to consolidate. And again, the ways you judge that without having advanced biometrics and everything else is your motivation to run. Do you want to run? Do you feel good when you're running? If you actually stop and listen to your body, it'll tell you what you need to know. If you start to run, you think, I'm just not enjoying this, I'll turn around and go home. Don't make it a bad experience.
Yeah, I think that's a really good rule of thumb. I mean, I don't know how many people, you look at your watch, you've done the run, and I'm running at the moment with Sunto, but I'm sure it's on all the watches, and it gives you a little smiley face, a frowny face, or whatever. And I'm sure like let's go skip. But actually, you know what? That's probably one of the most important parts of what happened in that run is how you felt, because that's going to feed back into training going forward, and also how that session went itself. But
absolutely. And when I'm training, I've got a few guys I train for trail and for skimo and a few other things. But if I use Training Peaks as my main software, and one of the key things you look at, you've got all the biometrics. You can have your resting heart rate, you can have your heart rate variability, you can get all this. But at the end of the day, the morning things they put in there is exactly that. It's that little smiley face. Is it smiling? Is it frowning? And after sessions, you just learn so much about it, and it's scarily reliable, actually. Just thinking, how do I feel about things?
There we go. Top tip, folks. Now we've noticed with our guides and also kind of amongst the community that tendinitis seems to be a real issue for a lot of people. Plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendinitis. I had it. My wife Karen's had it. I think, and a lot of people seem to get it in their 30s and their 40s. Is that just sort of anecdotal, just kind of my circle of people that I know are about, sort of about that at the time, or is it some evidence to it? And I suppose the second part to that question is there anything that people can do to prevent it? Because we all know it's once you get it, it seems to be a really long road out of that. But yeah, just sort of what are your thoughts on that, Neil?
So it's actually a relatively simple answer to this. And if I just say one word, this should sum it all up: strength.
Right.
Okay. So it tends to be 30s, 40s, 50s. You may be losing a bit of that natural muscle mass, that natural strength that you have. There may be some other things related to coming back into running after a break. You do sport as a youngster, you go off, have a career, then you come back in, and your running ability doesn't match your ability to stabilize and be strong. So as I say, the strength comes in lots of different ways. There's the stabilizing strength with the smaller muscles, the sort of things you always hear physios talking about: core, trunk stability, trunk control, glute stability, all these sorts of things, even foot core. There's lots of stuff that gets banded around, but ultimately it is being strong. And that leads on really to what you were saying about how long these tendon issues can last. Once the tendon issue is installed, the only way that is reliable and we can use as physios to really genuinely make a difference to how tendons behave is through strength. And it takes a time. It can take a long time to get people strong. It can take 4 to 6 months, but you have to strengthen your way out of a tendinitis or a tendinopathy. We tend to talk about tendinitis being a very acute inflamed tendon. Anything that's more than 6 weeks fits into that category of a tendinosis, really. So when you might hear those terms, they're starting to use them in running magazines and in more of the popular media. But that's what it is. It's really down to a loss of strength in an area, and then it's a good 16 to 20, 24 weeks to really genuinely change someone's strength. And it's not just doing simple stuff either. You have to actually move big weights often.
Right. Okay. That's a really strong answer. That's really good. And I think, again, from my experience, I've unfortunately had quite a few injuries over life, and which is partly why I know Neil so well from when I'm at Chamonix with my hip. But I think it's really important, isn't it, that people do the program, they stick with the program. A lot of these exercises, they're quite repetitive, or it might feel that there's such kind of minute gains that you're not necessarily even aware of over the time. But, it's not the time to hit the Facebook kind of forum and go, well, what do you think? It's like,
Yeah, and and you're absolutely right, Simon. I mean, it's not the weird and wonderful treatments. I mean, don't let me wrong. I mean, there are certain things. There are some shockwave treatments that are very helpful in terms of what we do for tendinopathy problems. But at the base of all of these, in terms of prevention, and then even once you come out the other side of treatment and things have settled down, you can use lots of different terms. But the one really we should be using is basic runner's hygiene. And it's those things you do on a daily basis. You don't think twice about brushing your teeth. Everyone's now starting to hear about sleep hygiene, not using your phone, making sure it's a dark room, lots of things like that. But there are the basic things that go along with running. And if you do them, they make a difference. And as you say, it's not necessarily the 1 week or the next day you feel different. And it's trusting the process. You do have to, again, it's all about adaptation. The body just needs its time to work its way through things. And whether or not it's more and more nowadays with wanting to post the latest photo of you running somewhere or doing this, but we're under pressure to get running again, to get good, and to think we can get really quick results. I think it's just to calibrate ourselves to think, well, actually, strength changes take time. We have to adapt positively on that. Again, thinking about that 10% rule, that applies to strength as well. So if you've got a big deficit there, you're going to need a bit of time to build all that strength back up again. So yeah, it's you're looking at those good habits. As a runner, you need good habits.
And obviously, like, I'm assuming that pro athletes, they're really on this. They're on top of this. So do you find that there's much difference between the injuries that you see then between the pros and then the amateurs? Is there a difference there
then? I think so. With the pros, the advantage is they tend to have more control over their time. As in, if you're a pro, you do get to prioritize your running, and with that comes the planning. So there are very few pros out there. There are some, of course, some quite well-known pros who don't have overly specific training programs. I mean, Courtney Dollwaters, she's well known for just running how she feels she wants to. But again, she's still being reflective. She's still working out really how she feels. I think she's a very smart cookie, and she doesn't let on. But I think she does have a bit of a plan at sometimes. But I think that's one of the big things. The pros are able to prioritize, plan. They can have a coach. They can have a strength coach. They can bounce ideas. They can really be well structured in their planning. So that's a massive advantage. So because of that, in theory, you see fewer of the stress and overtraining related problems. Probably touching on overtraining, that is the risk of the pros, though. Sorry, just to say the load related things, they're not going to increase things too fast, but the cumulative load right at the top end, that's a big potential. So you don't see too many amateurs with overtraining. It does exist. But that tends to be more pro related. Again, things on the upper end of that stress related scale, things like the bone injuries as well. So the metabolic consequences as well. So you tend to see that maybe a bit more. In the amateurs, they just bring everything to the table you can ever think of. They haven't got. They're not always running in the correct shoes. For them, things aren't always well adapted. Trying new forms of training and not giving time to develop in certain things, again, hoping for quick results. They've read an article, they try some of the training and ends up with a wee problem there. And again, the lifestyles don't always complement what they're trying to achieve with their sporting goals.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, I've got friends that, literally come up with new fad ideas. And I'm like, people are writing up quite extreme ideas because they sell books, because they're interested in
exactly, yeah.
And then if you suddenly incorporate all of that into your world, and I had a really good friend who took up barefoot running overnight, and was a really good marathon runner, and literally within 3 weeks, this is the truth, he was crippled. He couldn't walk because he'd just gone from zero to must be every run that I do and everything I do. And I'm not taking an opinion here on barefoot running, but it just like from zero to everything. And it was just don't do that. You've got to look at the process, like you say, and see where this is.
Yeah. And again, just another example. Someone had read an article on downhill running and how good it is for strength. and they just attack the downhill running, and obviously legs. It's massive load. You get that huge DOMs, you get all the really achy legs, but she just kept going and doing it and ended up with a really nasty tendinitis. It only took 2 weeks. It was sort of 5 sessions in, and that was her out for 2 months.
Gosh,
so yeah, it does happen.
Yeah, that's it. And along those lines of downhill running, and we've kind of already mentioned it, twisted ankles do pop up every so often.
Yeah, it's the trail runner's nemesis, isn't it?
It is. We had a runner who will remain nameless, but was on my last trip in the Alps and twisted an ankle. Actually, just at the point of walking, I had never twisted an ankle before, which I thought was amazing. Like, just had not had that experience before, which is obviously not a nice one to have. But I've seen you. I think you've seen me with a massive ballooned leg. I think it was one of I was leading. It was the first trip of the season, and I kind of just did some kind of cocky jump, and I went over and immediately. Obviously, I did, and then basically had this massive elephant leg for the rest of the trip. Yeah, what's the scoop? Is it? Do we need to be doing the whole rice thing? What's the current thoughts with sort of those sort of injuries, or pick up the trauma-based kind of injuries?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just as a quick number out there, of all the sporting injuries that occur across all sports, ankle sprains cover 20% of all those injuries.
Wow.
So it's by far the most prolific. Wow. And what I would say, and it's maybe experienced working with runners, probably more so than most other sports, is the fact we tend to write them off as, oh, it's just an ankle sprain, or I just rolled my ankle again. It's actually a bit more. It's a bit more than that, because what I then see is the same person then comes back a season later, they've had another couple of rolls, and then maybe 5 years later, they start to have a knee pain, a hip pain, a back pain. And then when you start to dig into someone's medical history, their sporting stuff, and you're finding out about all their previous injuries, the number of things that have originated way back from a problem with an ankle sprain. And
Really?
That's then changed a lot of their running mechanics. Foot placements, you can spot them quite quickly. So if anyone out there has had an ankle sprain in the last couple of years, dig out an old pair of your trainers and then have a little look at them and see if you see a significantly different wear pattern on one of your shoes. And if it's the one that looks a little bit odd was the ankle you sprained on, you might want to think about doing a little bit of rehab work on it, because the number of people who progress to have proper bone related issues with knees and with hips at a later date because of ankle sprains is just enormous. So if you do have the option, you do have access, you have funds just to get that ankle sprain checked and properly dealt with and get the right advice early on. Putting myself out of work because it means you won't be coming to see physios later on. I would say it's a very good thing to do. And in terms of what you should do early on, rather than using the old RICE protocol, we've moved that forwards a little bit. It gets longer because we're including more things in it, but essentially we now use police. So the police, P is your protection. So you really, if you need to, you can brace, you can use other things, but you're basically making sure no further harm comes to it. And then the new thing really that goes into this is about optimal loading. So that's basically saying that you do what you can with it so that you keep moving, but you're actually dealing with the symptoms. You're not allowing more irritation to accumulate, but it's just having a chance to settle, but not being immobilized. I think that's the most important thing. And then, yes, we can work with ice, compression, elevation. There are new studies, and there is good evidence to say that really for sort of ligament injuries, icing initially might not be the very best thing. And to give it a little bit of time. Again, we're just overthinking the body's own healing process. We have inflammation. It's there for a reason. And that's the same thing. You don't want to take anti-inflammatories for the first 48 hours. So the first couple of days following an injury. Your body actually goes through this process of inflammation whereby certain products, certain cells, certain chemicals arrive during the first 48, even 72 hours to an injury site. And if you're taking an anti-inflammatory, you can actually impede that natural process. They're great for pain. They don't change the volume of swelling, but they're great for pain. But they actually can have a significant effect on the quality of the scarring that occurs afterwards. So the actual healing process that happens afterwards can be compromised. So I think gone are the days where we should be thinking, oh, yeah, maybe I'll. It's not to pick on it, but the Sunday league football, it was always that thing. Right, I'm going to pop a couple of ibuprofen just in case I get injured. And it's, well, let's evolve that thinking a little bit and trust the body to do its own thing.
It's a very clever thing, right? And we've got to kind of recognize. It's almost like we've been trying to stifle what it's trying to do, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, they're great for pain, and they're very logical when you sort of start thinking about it. But in actual fact, the end results, it's not always the best. And again, most runners are pretty good with pain. You want to listen to that pain. If it's uncomfortable, use it as a guide. If it's tolerable to move around and it feels a little bit better after you've moved around for a while, and the pain doesn't get significantly worse afterwards, generally, and the next day overall you're not worse off. It's helping you. That movement's that optimal load. It's getting you moving, and that's another thing. The movement encourages circulation, so you're actually then encouraging all the local chemical reactions. You're moving these tissues around, and that does support the healing process.
That's great. I mean, I think that's really, really useful. I mean, it's definitely not talked about enough. Not even within like my community of leaders, as in the sense of, I'm an international mountain leader, and, we have obviously first aid courses and things like that we have to, repeat, expedition first aid and this is twisted ankles is something we come across all the time, but, and it's just really great to hear, that kind of, and it makes a lot of sense. I think almost like overthinking it before in some ways, and just not really working with the body, working against the body. So that's brilliant. Obviously, a lot of people aren't necessarily as fortunate to be able to get out as much as they perhaps even were during lockdown. I don't know. People's lives have changed so much over the last 18 months, and working from home, working in the office, then back at home, and then back in the office again. But people don't necessarily have as much time, I think, at the moment. And like you say, loading and all these sort of exercises that perhaps people should be thinking about in a preventative manner. If someone's really kind of only got a short period of time during their day, is there something that you would suggest as a sort of a fairly essential exercise or routine that they really, just a really simple one that they could potentially look at doing into kind of addressing some of those loading issues and things we'll be talking about?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, the one thing that I'm always trying to tread the balance with is being in my role. I get to spend time with people, and I can actually kind of prescribe that 5-minute routine. So we can say for any one person, right? Okay, well, you're clearly stiff in the ankles. You need to mobilize that. You're not quite stable enough around the hips and central core. The general advice I would say to people is just be a little bit self-aware. If you find that your back aches at the end of a running session constantly, you finding that, maybe have a little think either about your running position, or is it the fact you're not really actually stabilizing a little bit and you're going into a little bit of overextension. A lot of people are running very extended, in which case a little bit more deep core work can certainly help that. Are you feeling uncomfortable around the ankles? Do you feel certain things going on there? But the options really for those little hits would be a little bit of rolling the foot on something, and you find champagne corks, prosecco cork shapes are really great. They work an absolute treat. You find people use those. It's obligatory. You have to go out there and invest in one of those, but just keep it under the desk. And again, these are all kind of, I would say, the things I'm going to talk about, they're not actually really just for running. It's almost for just counteracting modern life. So you go to see a physio and they say, oh yeah, you need to work on your feet a little bit, you need better glutes, and you need better core. You have to ask the question, why is that? There's almost no one who goes to a physio and doesn't come away with something for those things. And it's the way we live our lives. We spend far too much time sitting, even if you have a relatively active job. It's sitting is we like to be comfortable, and chairs, they are comfortable. So we spend time in them. And you drive and you sit to eat and you do all these things. So ultimately you are accumulating time sitting. The other thing is we're always wearing shoes. We wear shoes all the time, and we walk on flat surfaces. So what I would say is that if we were barefoot more of the time, or we wear softer shoes, and this is from childhood, it's not suddenly going, right, I can go out there and I can go barefoot everywhere, but it's a product of us wearing shoes from childhood and walking on flat surfaces. That core and glutes do require more of more specific work than people would have based on our physiology. So if you did only have a few minutes, you could just do a quick roll through the feet. You could do a couple of simple glute exercises and a little bit of easy core. And I would say for sure you can get pretty much what you need to do done in 5 or 6 minutes.
Wow. I mean, there's no excuse there, is there? I'm going to have to. I know, because all the guides are going to be watching this as well. They'll hold me to it. So that is my plan then. So here we go. Add that to my New Year's resolution. I mean, it's powerful stuff, and I think, you know, at the end of the day, it all trickles down to, you know, where someone gets injured, isn't it? And if we can do everything we can to prevent that, and if it's just 5 minutes a day, I mean, and like 1 minute rolling a champagne cork or prosecco cork underneath your foot, well, you know, can't do that, then can't certainly fit in a marathon training program.
Keep it under your desk at work. That's the thing. No excuse. And the other thing as well, people just need to be really sensitive as to if they're aware of differences, asymmetries from side to side. So again, if you're rolling that foot and you find one side is just hypersensitive and the other side you don't really feel much at all, just focus on the one that needs a little bit of work on. If you're aware that you're trying to do a balance task and it is really difficult on one foot versus the other one, just focus on that one foot. Whether it's brushing your teeth, whether it's your stand-up desk and you're doing something there, whether you're on the tube and you're trying to just play around with balance, try to do it more weight bearing on one foot, make it part of your conscious thinking and include it, and go back to it. And if you work on something, you will see adaptation. That's the great thing about this. You will get the reward, you will get the payoff at the end of it. But just think long term and just be patient.
Stick with the process. That also came out. The process theory came out again with Hayden Hawke's chat, and you know, I do think that's the thing. Believe in the process, and you'll see the outcome that you're looking for. Now we started something called Trailfit, which is a little bit along lines of what you do, obviously, Neil, over here in the UK. But what it is, it's just basically a little bit of a circuit for trail runners, specifically for trail runners. So we're really fortunate we've got some really experienced coaches within Run the Wild, and we kind of created a 5-week, 6-week program of getting people, where they'd be jumping over hurdles, they'd be kind of doing reps, they're also working out on their perceived effort as well, and also doing quite a lot of proprioceptive exercises that we felt were really good for trail running. What we found out is that pretty much almost all people within our community just didn't do any strength and conditioning on a regular basis at all. And I'll say, I think before lockdown, actually, I was really guilty of not doing enough. And I think it's only really actually, seeing like yourself, Neil, when I was going through all these problems with my hip, that it kind of really installed that kind of routine, and actually, process will come out. And then it also came up the fact that, I think, the book that came out was a couple of years ago, and you worked with those guys about the uphill athlete. And I think in that book they say that, runners should be able to do a press up. And so we were kind of joking amongst ourselves that, like before a 5K race, everyone shouldn't be able to cross the start line until they've done a press up, which obviously wouldn't work, right? But I mean, how important do you think, like, obviously strength and conditioning is really, really important, but how important do you think a bit of upper body strength and conditioning, do you think that has a role to play for the runner? And if so, why?
Well, here's just a quick aside based on a good advert for strength and conditioning. I don't know if everyone's seen the Mo Farah documentary, but he credits a lot of his success to when he started working on power, and that came from strength work. So for him, that was his breakthrough moment when he became more powerful. And everyone has different needs, and just another way of conceptualizing why strength is important, but just looking at it from a different angle. When you look at trail running, you don't see lots of marathon runners often successfully transitioning to trail. So you don't see a lot of the elite Kenyans, you don't see a lot of the really elite guys being able to make that transition. And in the same way, the elite trail runners will not be competitive in an elite marathon. So it's both running tasks, but they're both very different. And trail running inherently requires strength. There's no two ways about it. For starters, you've got that the changes in altitude, you're going up and down, and to be able to run up and run down and support those forces, you have to be stronger. And simply the fact that you're being thrown around on the trail, and this is what's so beautiful about it, you're not just repeating the same motions. If you watch some of Killian's videos, some of his ones he's done with Salomon, you watch him run downhill. He hasn't got this beautiful, easy, simple running action. His arms are flailing around all over the place. And that's because he's keeping balance. He's using all these other strategies. And it's a great thing to see. And if you do run downhill and you try not to use your arms too much, it's not going to end up very well for you. So simply when it comes to using arms for just balancing out what your legs are doing, it's absolutely essential. And equally, if you're going for some of the longer trails, you're most likely going to be using running poles, and you can gain an enormous advantage from that. But you can't just pick poles up and expect to be successful with them. You need to have some strength, and you'll find by working with the poles, naturally it makes you quite strong. And it's certainly around here in the Alps, it's almost unheard of to tackle, even with the elites, to tackle the big runs without the benefit of poles. So you really will be needing some upper body strength. On a sales pitch as well, more muscle mass helps to metabolize lactate. So if you look at it from that point of view, it's definitely not a waste. I think sort of the more competitive you get, you start to think, well, actually, muscle mass is a waste, even in shoulders and arms and elsewhere. It's still actually quite a productive engine when it comes to some of the biochemical processing that goes on, that does actually happen in the muscles. So there are some very, very well built trail runners out there. Dmitry, the Russian, when you see him running, he's an absolute tank, and yet he's got amazing endurance. And maybe that's just another great advert for trail running, is the fact that all different shapes and sizes can do it. You can have a big old rugby build, you can step off the field there, but guess what? You can just trundle along. You can do your trail running. You can be all sorts of different shapes. If you look at the start line at the UTMB, it really, even amongst the elites, there are so many different body shapes. I find that part just brilliant.
I think that's you've hit the nail on the head on the kind of, trail running, and I think we're really fortunate. We have such an all-inclusive community, and like you say, runners come in all shapes, sizes, backgrounds, and whatever. Everyone can be a trail runner. It's open to everyone. I think that's really important. I think exactly that, and I think that's really interesting that trail running is such a physical activity. It's also very mentally engaging, like we were saying before. To avoid injury, whilst you're kind of bombing down these trails, and we've looked at these things, and it's interesting as well. Like England Athletics has this kind of very technical model, which on how runners should run, and it's all based off from track and road, and then you hit trail, and it kind of like this kind of all goes out, right? Because it is just just kind of trying to find stability in gravity. And
that's why it's so forgiving as well, because trail running accommodates all kinds of biomechanical errors.
Yeah,
because you're not just repeating the same action over and over again. So you do find it's amazing what people can successfully run trails with, that would simply exclude them from running flat 5Ks, 10Ks. They would have too many problems appear too quickly. And I mean, it's again with age as well. The average age of trail runners is much higher than the average road runner, and I love that as well. And the fact that it's running for life. It's not just, okay, we're here just to do times and everything else. And I think having adventures, not winning races, some of the stuff that you believe in loads, I think that is such an important aspect to what the trail running is. And I think it's every aspect of running. The road running, again, some people absolutely love it, but it's just very, very specific. And I think the trail running, it just has every element of movement. It's that game element. It's acceleration, deceleration, changes direction. In terms of overall benefit for the body, it's good stuff.
Absolutely.
And I love I always like talking about age when it comes to running. Couple of key things, like with the winners of the UTMB, Marco Almo, he won at aged 59. So I think that's just an amazing. He won it 3 years in a row, 57, 58, 59. And the fact when you look at even if you look at marathon runners, if someone runs a marathon when they're 18 years old, they've trained up to that point, they can set a marker time, they can keep training, and they're likely to continue improving that time up to the age of 28. Now, if they carry on training, that's in the same way, looking after their bodies and everything else, there's going to be a degradation in their running times from 28. But the age at which that time degrades to the same time they ran when they were 18 means they will be the ripe old age of 64.
Wow, that's
so
amazing.
That's how long it takes for us to really lose. And I always say to people, look, you're 64, but you've still got the running ability of an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And it's just to reinforce that you can get out there, and you can run and you can enjoy it. It's just having the belief that you are capable, you are able to do this.
That's really powerful stuff. I've got one more question before we're going to go to the quick fire questions, which we did last couple of weeks ago with Hayden. I thought it was quite a lot of fun, so we're going to do that with you. So how important is a warm-up and a cool down in regards to running? I think it's something we do religiously before a run with Run the Wild, but I'll be honest, when I'm out running on my own, sometimes I forget it, sometimes I don't do it. But how important is it, or is it important?
Again, specificity. Just saying a warm up for every session, you got to think about what type of session you're doing. If you're saying, okay, I'm pretty good, I'm not carrying any injuries, there's nothing specific that I'm working on, and you're doing just a nice long, slow, easy Sunday run, you're going out for your long run of the week, walk out the door, walk for a little bit, start jogging very slowly, and then gradually build it up until you've got to the pace you want to be at. When you come towards the end of it, slow that jog right back down again, and then walk the last K. Ramp in, ramp out. And if you're not trying to do anything too highly competitive, I think for most people that actually works very well. It is different for everyone. I'd love to say sort of toe the party line and say, no, you must do warm-ups, you must do cool downs. But actually, you've got to look at what that warm-up is actually trying to do for you. And if you warm yourself up through gentle movement, the same patterning you're going to be using during that run, that's great. If, however, you're looking to do things a little bit more punchy, so you're talking about your interval sessions, I would say you want to do things that are going to prepare you to actually do those intervals well. You can do some things even before you start running, just as simple as doing some leg swings. And this is what I say to folk: look, if you've only got 30 seconds, just do half a dozen leg swings forwards, across the body, and do the same thing for the right one and the left one. That little bit of range, that little bit of tension through there. The days of passive stretching, I hope everyone sort of thinks that sitting there and just sitting for 10 minutes on a hamstring stretch is not going to help you run well. That I can reassure you. If you've been given correctives by a physio, that's great, or someone who's been training you, that's actually very valuable to do. So if you've got a specific thing you're trying to work on, say you've got slightly reduced hip mobility, and you know that you can release that with a minute on the foam roller before you get out, that's a great way of doing it. I would say mobilize, but then also switch on. So if you're doing that mobility work, you open up the range of motion. So you're correcting it back to a normal, but then you're reactivating, get one of the bands around the knees and do some side crabs, do some monster walks to switch it back on again. If you're going to be trying to be explosive, maybe do some of those, do a little bit of a gentle warm up. And then if you want to really get that explosivity going, do half a dozen vertical jumps. Try some depth jumps, but it's all about you trying to fire the system up. You're going to get maximally activated, so that when you do try and do that effort, the system has already been woken up. It's already been prepared for it. So that's great. And then, yeah, exactly. It's just looking at what session you're going to be doing and saying, right, well, what do I need to be? What state do I need to be in order to be able to do that well? Yeah. The other end of that is your recovery. I would say I would probably put more emphasis on recovery than I would on having to be religious about the warm up every time. And it's actually about observing a proper ramp down, so that when you finish running, you don't just sort of run to your front door, walk in, open the laptop up and go straight back to work. that's a surefire way to not mitigate totally your run, but it's gonna elongate that recovery time and make it harder. So definitely have a good period of walking at the end. Again, working with some of the Olympic teams, we actually did the lactate testing afterwards, and we could prescribe for various sports. We know for the cycling for sure, and for when we were doing the grinding sessions with the rowers, we were able to tell how quickly they were clearing lactate by just testing the blood. So some of the guys needed to keep grinding for 5 minutes. Some needed to do just doing a couple of minutes. That was enough. But it's literally about moving your blood, making sure that if you have done a really hard session, you're not just sitting there with all that congestion. And that's really what it is. You're just moving metabolites through. You're just helping that. You're basically clearing tissues, and just ramping down through that. Again, if you saw, I mean, it's not really the time to do to be doing too much in terms of strength work straight after a hard session. You can make the benefits, make the most of doing a little bit of passive stretching afterwards. So if you know that you have got something you're really trying to work on, it is actually easier to do it when the muscles are fatigued, when there's less activation in there. But I'd also be a little bit careful working too hard, but it can be a little bit easier doing that at the end of a session. So again, you can think of preparation before it as your correctives. You go out, you exercise. You may even, whilst you're running, I'll say to clients all the time, if you're developing stiffness, for example, in an ankle when you're out running, stop, do a quick range of motion test. And if you're finding that that's tightening up whilst you're running, do a couple of the simple mobility drills that you maybe discussed or anything else, or just gently mobilize. So say you've got a tight ankle, you can just do a couple of squats, some of the crouching motions that force the knee forwards, keeping the heel down, and then you can start running again. And it can buy you more time without it just getting tighter and tighter and tighter through something. And then at the end, you just try and open things back up so that you're back to your normal range of motion afterwards.
Okay, that is great. That was definitely
throwing loads of information.
Really.
I'll talk about this stuff forever, but
that's brilliant.
Hopefully, we've got lots of geeky runners out there that want detail.
Absolutely. No, I can see there's lots of people online watching, and they're all really happy hearing about your comments on this. It's great to get the honest truth on this sort of stuff, and I think it's often not talked about enough, really, or it's talked about in rumors, but not actually with an expert, not with someone who really knows what they're doing. So
and the thing is, a lot of the basic stuff's just not sexy, is it? It's just okay. Well, yeah, you just got to get on and do it. Yeah.
So true. Right. Okay. So on to the quick fire questions. Here we go. Are you ready?
Let's go.
So some people have asked questions as we've been going through, and hopefully they'll answer some of these. So first one was glute weakness, fact or fiction?
I would say fact.
Fact. Okay. Second question. What is your favorite sport for which you work as a physio on? It could be
historically. I love them all. They're brilliant. They're all so different. That's the thing. The characters are all there. It's teamwork versus individuals. It's really hard. I'm gonna have to say trail running. I love it.
Right answer. Most scary moment working as a physio?
Arriving in Japan, working with a physio team, and realizing I'd left a physio bed behind.
Great. Okay. Next question: barefoot or cushion?
Cushion.
Do you practice what you preach?
I would say I stretch probably 6 times a year. No more than that. But as I say, it's all very specific to individuals. Remember,
Yes.
as a gymnast when I was a kid, I'm quite stretchy anyway. So I feel good when I run. It gives me good tone. So yeah, and I do try. I'm not going to lie. I do happen to have a supply of corks at home that I can supply anyone. But other than that, mostly Prosecco. I'm a bit of a cheap guy, though.
That's right. So that's it. Self-addressed envelopes to Neil. We'll put up the website later. Question 6: Theraguns, fad or helpful?
You know what? It's getting so topical. I think they're here to stay. I really do. I do. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I was at the running show on the weekend, and I think every other store was selling them. So yeah. Question 7. We've got just a few more to go. Don't worry. Does rock tape really work?
It does, but it's all in the hands of the user.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay.
And even if you believe it works, it works.
Well, there we are. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Most effective is the placebo effect, isn't it?
Indeed, we'll take that 40% any day.
Yeah. Best cross-training exercise for runners?
I'm going to say just walking, simple walking, just getting out and still moving. It's time on feet. It's less impact, and yeah, it's good. It's really good.
Okay, cool. Last 2 questions. If you had to choose between dry needling or shockwave therapy, what would you go for?
In my toolkit as a physio?
Yes.
I would say I'd use dry needling a bit more.
Okay, cool. And the last question you'll be pleased to know in the quickfire round is: do you use running poles? Which I think I know the answer to.
I most certainly do use running poles. Yes, I think they're a stroke of genius.
Excellent. Well, we're going to have to convince Hayden Hawkes because he doesn't use them yet. So we'll see what he can do with them on his hands.
Cool.
Okay, so just thanks very much, Neil. Obviously, it's been fantastic chatting to you. Just a couple of questions from me because we've taken up a lot of your time. But I think
we're talking running. I don't care. We'll keep going.
Yeah,
fine. Great.
Yeah. We've got another hour. It's just brilliant stuff, and I think everyone's really enjoying the content. So yeah, thanks for everyone who's staying with us for the moment. But we'll just be a few more minutes. When you were treating me with my hip, and for those that don't know, I'll cut it really, really short because I dine out on this one a little bit. I do talks at festivals and things, all this sort of stuff. But I had a major hip surgery and I was told I wouldn't run again. And Neil got me running again. So there we go.
I think you put a fair bit of effort into it. It's all about how much you actually put in yourself, Simon. I know you trusted the process. You went with it. And I would say, that was you earned the result you got. So, yeah.
Oh, well, that's very, very kind of you. But I would say that, and we alluded this to before, that it's not just the physical side of things. And I often came to the clinic not just feeling physically deflated and hobbly, but also mentally kind of just neat. And you were often not just, sorting me out physically, but sorting me out mentally as well. How important do you think, the mental and emotional side of recovery are, in that whole process?
Okay. How about we take it back to running again? I'll answer this question, but with running. Finishing an ultra, is it physical or mental? How much of it is physical and how much is mental? There's so much of the mentality involved. If you don't believe you can finish an ultra, will you finish it? No. If you believe you're not going to get better, you're not going to get better.
Yeah.
So in terms of how you just translate that into whether it's training, whether it's finishing a race, whether it's injury, I think it's absolutely fundamental. And for me, that's where there's a lot of sort of patient education is involved. You need to really understand what's going on. You can't, and that's, I think, again, maybe not to go into too much, but the difference between physio and some of the other health-related professions. It's not about retaining control of what's going on in myself. It's about trying to give you as much control of what's going on and responsibility in equal measure for what's going on. With all these things, it has to be a partnership. I've got plenty of knowledge. I know what's going on, and you do your assessment. You can look at the scans. You look at the surgery report. So you have a very good understanding of what's going on and what is going to help. But actually, the sales pitch, how you get buy-in, how you get someone understanding what's actually going on, and actually adopting a view in themselves, a mindset where they can see themselves getting better. That for me probably is one of the biggest things about working in sports. that is so vital. And actually, it translates to working with other patients as well. So if someone doesn't have a focus, they don't have a goal, they don't have a reason to get better, you're on a very different pathway. Whereas you got a trail runner saying, "Look, I've got a race in 6 weeks. This is the state of play. What are you going to do?" You throw it back to them and say, "Right, okay, well, it might not be perfect, but let's get you to 85, 90% of what you can be." And that, for a lot of people, is actually enough to get a result that they'd be happy with, without causing long-term harm. So for me, it's just great. And I find I get so much more satisfaction scratching a bit below the surface. If I just wanted to fix things and see things fixed at the end of it, I'd have become a car mechanic. And that's not the case. You don't just switch them apart, do this. I mean, it's actually, it's seeing those success stories, and you're trying to put more and more wins, get scores in the win column. And I find it does work that way. You get people buying in, they understanding what the process is. They become more informed consumers, and they come back to me with better questions, more specificity on how to do the exercises that they're doing. And every physio will tell you, you can tell within 10 seconds whether or not someone's been doing what you've asked them to do. Don't kid yourselves. Every physio knows.
Oh, I was being able to pull the wool over your eyes there, Neil.
Yeah, nice try.
Excellent. No, I think that's, yeah, I mean, that's a great way to sort of wrap up on that sort of side of things. I think that's really, really helpful for us. We started this sort of just at the end of last year because we were having a chat within the team about New Year's resolutions and who took out New Year's resolutions and all that kind of thing. And this sort of evolved from there, doing these sort of regular chats that they've become now with, experts in their fields. And what are your goals for 2022? Running related goals or activity ways anyway? Do you have any?
Yeah, there's the perennial UTMB, but I didn't get selected in the lottery. Heard that one yesterday, but it's great. That opens the doors for some other things. So I'm hoping to jump across the border and start getting involved in Tour de Géant. So we'll see. That's going to be that's a whole beautiful part of running, the whole Aosta Valley, that it's waiting to be discovered, and I just cannot wait to do that.
That's 320k or something. Is that
the full
right?
one's 330 with 23,000 vertical. So wow. Yeah, I better start trusting that process now, hadn't I? Better get on it.
That sounds absolutely amazing. That's incredible.
So again, it's a lottery one. So if it doesn't happen this year, next year, it's on the list anyway. So the big thing is just to spend time in the mountains, having fun. I've got a few little projects with the ski mountaineering to finish off. That season's really just getting going now, and that's the trail running winter sport of choice around here. So again, it's very similar. It's a little bit of everything, and it's all about spending time in the mountains, moving. So you're either doing it on feet in trail in the summer or skimo in the winter here. But the goal really is to get out there and just enjoy the mountains.
I think that's a great goal, a very positive goal for 2022. Well, look, Neil, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, Simon. It's great to catch up, see how you're getting on, and the success of Run the Wild has just been brilliant. I think what you're doing to get people included, the community work. I think all the trail runners who've been party to that should be very grateful. So keep up the good work, mate. It's good. Love it.
Thank you very much. Well, if anyone, like I said, Neil is based in Chamonix. So here we go. And you can also find out Neil online as well. Check out his BeFit Apps. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you this evening. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you everyone for all their questions as well. And for those that did enter the UTMB race series but did not get in, never fear. You can do it over 6 days with Run the Wild. It's a lot more enjoyable. Trust me, from personal experience, although it wasn't as quick as Neil. But do check out our adventures online as well. I really hope that everyone has a great weekend. Don't forget those 5 minutes a day with the champagne cork and walking around barefoot as well. Just on behalf of the community and myself as well, thank you very much, Neil. And I really, really appreciate your time this evening.
Great, Simon. I can't wait to see you over in Chamonix soon.
Yes, I'll be there soon. Right, thanks everyone. Brilliant. And have a great weekend. Thank you very much.